education makes workers, and one guy thinks that you shouldn't send your kids to school at all. He thinks it's the worst idea in the world. But before we get into that clip,
I got a question.
and that question is school the worst thing you could send your child or children to? What say you? I want you to think about this as you watch this clip.
You know why people don't think it's easy to make $1 million? Because they go to school. And school is the worst thing you can send your children to. I said that. The whole school is cool, keep kids in school, that is propaganda, and here's why. Do you know who founded and funded the General Board of Education?
The Rockefellers?
John D Rockefeller. Yeah. Do you know what he said?
He wants everybody to be employees.
Yep. He said, I am not in the business of making a nation of thinkers. I'm in the business of making a nation of workers.
Hold up.
Man.
That's true.
I mean, it's something you don't hear every day, because normally you hear like, hey, higher education, and studies show that if you go to college, you are way more likely to, make six figures or whatever. You're going to make so many more millions of dollars once you hit retirement versus like if you don't go to college and get your degree. So there's all these studies out here. And then now this guy's like, well, you know why you can't be a millionaire is because you don't really think like a millionaire. You're thinking like a worker, which is a very interesting concept.
I mean, I think I heard this exact thing maybe like a few weeks ago about the Rockefeller guy. And I was like, that makes sense. But like the whole concept itself, I don't know. Have you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
No.
Okay, so in that book, pretty much like there's Robert Kiyosaki, and he has like his real dad, which is like he calls his poor dad, and then he has a mentor who he calls his rich dad. And his poor dad was very educated. He was like a professor, something like that. So he's very educated, very much pro school kind of thing. Whereas his rich dad, I think he just had like his high school diploma or whatever, but he had like multiple businesses. He was wealthy and he had real estate and stuff. So all that to say, like there is a certain mindset, I would say, when it comes to becoming wealthy versus getting a bunch of degrees.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think that's a quality take there, because when you go to school, and just like you said, John D. Rockefeller said he wanted everybody to be workers, because when you put people in a certain mindset to buy into a company, well, that's very good for the company. If everybody's like, yeah, I know my role and I can do everything. And I think that's part of the reason why you see, especially Gen Z, like, I don't want to go to work for anybody, because they're trying to be more entrepreneurial minded, especially when you have things like YouTube and social media influence, where you can kind of do your own thing and make and at least supplement part of your living. Even if you have to have a job, you can still, do what we do. Like we both have jobs, but then we're also able to, make content. And I'm also able to, have a side company that I'm running, like a little media company. So yeah, and it's fun for me. Everything that I do, I really enjoy, but I do have that, stable 9-to-5 job, even though I work from home, that it's like the corporate job. And so, but I'm thinking more entrepreneurial like, which I think is the heart of what he's saying. Not that school is inherently bad, but it does sound like it came from maybe a shady background as far as like the General Board of Education.
Everything you learn in school, every single solitary thing about how to think, you learn because school has taught you to think that way. They taught you to think like an employee. They taught you to think like a poor person, because if everyone was rich, the economy would fall apart.
Yeah, I would agree that, the school system does teach you how to be an employee, just because, I worked working a corporate job now, and I can definitely see like the overlap with school and how it kind of conditions you to operate in certain ways. So I would agree with that statement.
Therefore, we can't have too many rich people. So what do? We put kids into indoctrination camps to show them how to be an employee. And then they go out in the world and they think like an employee, so they stay an employee. They don't become entrepreneurs. They don't become rich. Why do you think they ask you, raise your hand to go to the bathroom? What kind of sick shit is that? I gotta piss. I gotta raise my hand to go to the bathroom? Like, really think about that. That's fucked up.
No, I mean, I don't know about that. That just seems like a little orderly thing, or at least you can say like, hey, go to the bathroom, or like there's a signal. But for somebody to have to, I don't think that's that's kind of wild. But for somebody to have the power to say, no, you can't go use the restroom if you have to go use the restroom, I think it's kind of crazy. Because I've actually seen that in some of my classes where it was maybe like a more talkative kid and the teacher was just annoyed with that kid. And then the kid had to go to the bathroom and they're like, no. And it's like, no, I'm about to like pee myself. Like, I need to go to the bathroom. And they're like, no, you're getting on my nerves, which I think that shouldn't happen.
That's abuse of power.
Right. It's abuse of power. But it does allude to the fact that, the things that you do in school do condition you to be more of a worker instead of more entrepreneurial minded. So let's get into some of our points, starting with Miss Kenya McIntosh.
All right, my point.
Well, let's raise the question first.
Okay.
Is school the worst thing you can send your children to? Do y'all have a difference of opinion after watching that video, or what say you? Kenya, get into your point.
I would say most people will never become an entrepreneur or become wealthy, but I think that's because they don't have the mindset. And I also don't think that school necessarily helps out with that level of mindset and skill set. So that's why it's important to understand your children's gifts and expound on them. If you choose to send your kids to school, do so with networking and community in mind. Don't just send your kids to school and not develop them to be individuals. Now that's setting your kids up for failure. So, yeah, because I think a lot of times people just put all their trust and faith in the school system. Like you see with like the reading stuff going on, people or children not being at the proper reading levels. And I think a big cause of that is because parents just send their kids off to school and have hope and trust that the teachers will have enough time to teach their kid how to read, rather than you're supposed to teach your kid how to read
outside of school.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems is too that parents are just expecting the school system to do everything.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe in the past, like parents were very adamant and involved in like making sure their kids stayed on track and making sure that they were understanding the material that they were learning, as well as the life lessons and experiences just in everyday life. It's like, oh yeah, like this applies to this, this applies to this.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really an application to connect the dots.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was growing up, like something would happen and mom would say like, yeah, like this is something that happened. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's something that we kind of learned in school. And she'd be like, oh yeah. And then we'd have a conversation based off that. But it seems like, and I don't know because I'm not a parent and I'm not around I am around a lot of, teenagers because I coach baseball. But it seems like a lot of the conversations that these kids are having aren't applying to things that would help them later in life. It's applying to the immediate gratification of, seeking glory and, attention online in social media or different things like that, rather than like, oh yeah, like how can I, use the skills that I have or the experiences that I have to, foster a good life later down the road. Yeah. So my point is, I believe education has its place in society, and it is the best way to lift yourself into a higher socioeconomic status. I mean, there's been tons of studies on that. The problem now is that everyone is being fed the same formula and told, to follow the same script, which is not allowing one's education to be utilized effectively. And so, like the video was kind of alluding to, people are being told, yeah, just go to school, get your degree, and once you get your degree, then you get a job. And that's true in a sense, but that is a very oversimplification of what needs to happen. It's like, well, yeah, I'm in school to get my degree, but am I fostering relationships? Am I making connections so that I can get an edge on getting the best possible job that'll allow me to have the future that I desire? Because there's so many TikToks that we see all the time, every day, where people are like, I just got out of college and now this degree seems worthless because I want a job that's $200,000, but I can only make $50,000 and you can't live off $50,000. And it's like, well, if you're single, yeah, you can live off $50,000 in most places. But they don't want to start from the bottom. They just want basically the trophy without, playing the game and going through the season and getting to the championship and winning in a corporate setting, whether that looks like climbing the corporate ladder or maybe starting in corporate America and branching off once you have once you've compiled some of your money, save some of your money so that you can, take risk on some of these entrepreneurial ventures.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also forget to reverse engineer what they
like
want to do.
Like the successful people?
What do you mean?
Like what successful people did and what they want to do?
Yeah, kind of like I think people forget okay, this is the overarching way I would like my life to look. At least 5 years out, this is how I would like my life to look.
Oh, okay.
So what do I need to do in order to get to that point?
What steps do I do?
Yeah, so I think people don't do that, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like it's almost like, oh, that would take too much work. Let me just follow what society's told me. They told me to go get this piece of paper, this degree, and they told me all I have to do after I do that is to apply for jobs. But it's like, yeah, but they told everybody else that. And so you have to compete. It's life is a competition, and that's why that's why a lot of companies like hiring, student athletes right out of college. And I was told that by numerous companies that I applied for. It's like, yeah, we love athletes because you guys get in here, especially in business and sales, and y'all compete because it's like a game to you and y'all are used to competition. And it's like, yeah, but that's what you're supposed to do in life. You compete to get a job, and you got to compete to get promotions at the job, and you're competing all of your life. And if you don't compete and you adopt this attitude of entitlement, saying that, no, just because I got here and I'm in this position, I'm owed this, then that is going to harm you in the long run because nobody owes you anything.
Yeah, very true.
But we want to know what you think about that. Is school the worst thing you could send your children to? We're like, but you might have a difference of opinion. You might have an opinion that's beyond ours or behind ours or in between ours. We want to hear what you have to say down in the comments below. We'll be right back for our last segment in the live chat. But if you are watching the replay, check this video out next. Right foot